Thank you.
Yes, you can, Gail, thank you.
We're just having some technical, learning, we're
I think we're
doing
good now, I think
some
we're
technical
good.
learning challenges here, but I think we're good. All right, so I'm gonna officially call the meeting to order at, I've got 7:02. I don't know if there's.
I see 8:01 there on the wall there.
Yeah, well, we're gonna go for 7:02. This is the December, yeah, you've got it as September 13th meeting notice in your agenda, but it is the December 13th,
Oh, my God.
it's the December 13th meeting of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. Thank you all for coming. I'm gonna go around and just, make sure that we have a quorum for the Flood and Erosion Control Board members. Speaking is Becky Bunnell, who is the chair, and then we have,
I'm Dick Mahusky, I'm the secretary.
And Don Lamberti, vice chair.
okay, I am not going to, introduce our guests at this point, because there's a lot on the phone and there's a lot on Zoom. But when we get to the public comment time, I will ask you all to say your name and your address and state your comments or questions. In the meantime, we're gonna go through the agenda as it was posted. And the first order of business is to hear, consider, and act upon the minutes of November 22nd special meeting. I did have a few edits.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead first with your edits?
Okay, in the front page near the bottom, about 2 inches from the bottom, it says, the RFP does contain a note for a resilience measure. What's the resilience measure?
We don't know yet. Basically, we are doing an RFP that will have a resilience, study as part of it.
Okay, study, I didn't know what a resilience measure was.
Yeah,
A
we don't-
measure is a project,
We don't,
Okay.
we don't know what it
methodology.
will be at this point until.
Do you want me to
we
change the wording?
No, that's a
Okay.
common term.
And also, down near the bottom there, it says, fourth line up, it says G. That should be, Gazelle, shouldn't it?
Yes,
Yes, his full name.
Elias Gazelle, Elias G, is it Elias Gazelle?
Prue, I have a marked up set that
Yeah.
I'll be giving to you.
Okay, yeah.
I have a markup set as well that I'll be
Okay,
sending to
yeah.
you.
It says,
Okay.
the town must be. It's just, the must is there twice, right here. Okay, that's,
You guys wanna give me all your marked up things,
yeah.
We will, we
Yeah,
will.
okay, I was, also.
Dick, did you have
That's
other?
all. Yes, I have a few comments. Again, down in that same paragraph 4, 3 lines down, at the end of the line, it says, fill pile dirt and to grade the beam section by section. I would eliminate the word to and just insert the word the. So it reads, fill pile dirt and the grade, strike the next the, and the grade beam section by section. Again, I'll give
I had that same comment, so.
The other thing, maybe 6, 7 lines down, starts with FECB, are aware of the reduction of the dirt under the pavilion. I would use the word sand, because that entire beach is sand, not dirt. And continue on that line. The letter from the FECB supports, I would insert the date, the 10/23/22, and the letter is okay. Then on the line that starts with G, and the board's need to restore the fill under the pavilion, I would replace the word need with desire. Just gives a better
Actually,
sense
can I comment
to
on
me.
that same one? Because I don't think we are asking to restore the fill under the pavilion. We are asking to add resiliency to the pavilion project, not necessarily through restoring the fill. I would actually strike restore the fill under the pavilion, and the boards need to improve resiliency.
Agree with that.
right?
Okay. And then the last sentence on the first page, the town must, the town first must be in regulation with FEMA. I would just say that the town first must be within FEMA regulations. And then just on the second page, the last bullet down under item 5, I would just put Fairfield Beach Road instead of FB, because it's the Fairfield Beach Road elevation. That's it.
I had another comment on item 5. It says the last sentence is, there's a chance they could miss $750,000 because they don't have someone who knows how to write these types of grants. I think the objective of that comment in the meeting was that we would recommend that the town find additional grant writing resources so that we can, get multiple grants, not necessarily a $750,000 grant. So I'd like to, change that to, you know, there is a high likelihood that we would not, be able to apply for as many grants as we might be eligible for. That's all I had.
So I would make a motion that the minutes as amended at this meeting be accepted.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the minutes as amended, and I'll send you the amended comments, are now approved. Thank you, Prue. I'm going to go to the next item of business, which is the election of the 2023 officers. Do I have a motion for who should be president or chair?
Yes, I have a motion to make. I would like to propose that Becky Bunnell continue for 2023, serving as the chair. She has done a yeoman's job this year and the year before, so why fix something that isn't broken?
Okay, I second the motion. You do a great job, and thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Do I have a motion? We're gonna do a motion for all of them, and then we'll do a complete, vote on the full slate. Do we have a motion for, vice chair?
I have a motion for vice chair. I would propose that Donna Ann Birdie, who is the current vice chair, continue in that position.
I would second that motion. He is doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion for a secretary?
I make a motion that Dick Mahowski become secretary.
I would second that motion.
Doing a great job.
He's doing a great job.
Very agreeable.
And here we
really are.
You do get along very well.
All right, so with that election, are there any other, comments from the board on other people who would take various officer positions?
No.
All right, I then, would put forward a motion to have Becky Bunnell chair, Don Lamberti vice chair, Dick Mahusky secretary. Do I have a second for that?
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that is our elected officers for 2023.
You get along.
Let's move on to our, next agenda item, which is 2023 meeting dates. Dick, you had sent around, or do you want to just read out the proposed dates? We would propose to keep.
Yeah, basically, we're keeping with our third Tuesday of the month. So, and on this list that I sent around for approval, I just made a couple annotations. So the first one will be January 17th, and that is the day after Martin Luther King Day. February would be the 21st, which is the day after President's Day, and it's right around Mardi Gras, so if everybody's going to New Orleans. Then it's March 21st, April 18th, May 16th, June 20th, July 18th, August 15th, September 19th, October 17th, and then November 21st, that's the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. I see no reason to change it by a whole week. That's one annotation. And then December 19th is a Tuesday. Christmas is the following Monday, so there's an intervening weekend there, and I think that's a reasonable day.
Right.
So those are the dates that I propose.
Are there any comments on those dates? Do I hear a motion to accept those dates?
I make a motion to accept the date.
I make a motion to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those dates
Very
are
good.
now accepted.
Approve of that?
Dick, can you get that to?
I will-
Thank you, Clerk, and make
I
sure
will
that
notify the town clerk of the
officers
officers and the dates for 2023.
Yes, thank you very much.
I need to put them in the minute.
Okay, we'll send them to you. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the next item of business, and this is to hear a presentation by the Ash Creek Conservation Association. And Gail, we have you on screen, and I believe we have
Great.
visual as well.
Okay, can I share my screen?
So you have to let her share the screen.
No, she can share it. You have a,
Have you given her authorization? You have to like go in
It says
and
host disabled participant
That green
screen
thing.
sharing.
click on that, and it should allow you to say, yes, share screen.
Share.
Share, yep. All right. That should let you do it, Gail.
Okay, let's see, view options, share screen, host
Is it
disabled participant screen sharing.
still showing disabled?
Yeah.
She hasn't given.
All right, we didn't, oh, because it just said share. Okay, go back to, the share screen again and see if you can, participant.
No, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. What about making me a co-host or something?
Yes.
It says one participant can share at a time here, let's try this.
Do the next one. Try it now, Gail.
Okay. Yeah, works now, great.
There we go.
Getting there. Okay, can you see my screen now?
We
Yes,
can.
we can.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm here with Rick Landau, one of our board members and the project manager for most of our organization's restoration efforts. My name is Gail Robinson. I'm the president of the Ash Creek Conservation Association. And we are a grassroots organization with over 200 members from both Fairfield and Bridgeport. So before I begin, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and understanding where is Ash Creek, okay, and the different components of it. This is the channel that goes into the South Benson Marina, which is right here, Jennings Beach. When we talk about the barrier spit, this is the piece of land that juts out and separates Long Island Sound from the Ash Creek Tidal Estuary, which is all of this. We've got a big marsh island called Great Marsh Island with an osprey nest on it. And Fairfield Open Space is over here. And all this side is Fairfield, all this side is Bridgeport. So that just sort of gives you a general lay of the land. And then I just want to talk briefly about why is it important, okay? This is a fragile ecosystem for the maintenance of flora and fauna. It is a shellfish restoration area. It's a key stopover area for migratory shorebirds, one of 15 in all of Connecticut. And most importantly, to your commission, it acts like a sponge to absorb floodwaters. Unfortunately, all of these tidal wetlands in Ash Creek are projected to disappear by 2100. And the barrier spit is projected to disappear even sooner, within the next 14 years. It could actually disappear a year from now if we got hit with a big enough storm. But, it might disappear later than 2036 if the plantings we installed in the spring, hold up well. So, but based upon the current rate of erosion, that's where this figure came out to 2036. And how did we arrive at that? Well, we hired some scientists to come and study the erosion on our barrier spit in Great Marsh Island. And they ended up with a 34-page analysis and a set of recommendations. They found that our shoreline, our southern shoreline on the barrier spit had retreated 60 feet inland. And all the sand is gone. That used to be a sandy beach. It's now hard cobble. And the overall height, the average height of the sand spit is lower. And you can see the changes yourself. If you look on the left, you see 2011 and how wide the barrier spit was back then. And if you look on the right, that's 2021. So that's the current state of the tidal estuary, of the barrier spit, much thinner. And Great Marsh Island, we've lost approximately 25,000 square feet of intertidal marsh on Great Marsh Island. So we are losing marshland there, and also in the fringing tidal wetlands, which we haven't even measured yet. So this is, so we're in the early stages of what's called an ecological collapse. And that's a technical term, and it means that will no longer be a tidal wetland. It is in the process of changing into something else, probably a bay without any fringing marshlands, and the marshlands are being driven out. And what's causing these changes? Well, Fairfield's Marina and the channel dredging that's been going on since 1950, that has had an impact, along with the jetty that protects the channel from, from sand that blows along the shoreline. Natural events such as the 1-2 punch we got with Irene and Sandy in 2011 and 2012, and rising sea levels from global warming. Marshland actually can grow up higher. It can grow on top of decayed organic matter, but it can't keep up with the pace of the current sea level rise. Here are some photos that show the washover during storms like Irene and Sandy. And you can see the barrier spit being washed over on the left side. And on the right side, you see this destruction that occurs because of the washover. So the vegetation gets washed away. On top of all these complexities, we also have no governing structure. We've got a tidal estuary that is bordered by 2 municipalities, but governed by no one. So you can see on the left-hand side, you can see this town-city boundary line that was proposed and enacted. That was back in 1954. And that was to enable the marina to go in and to allow for dredging. And so that town line goes right through the barrier spit and right through Great Marsh Island, and then right down the center of the water. Now, we have had some success in forming a working group, and Tim Bishop is on tonight. He's part of that working group. And we also have a couple of people from the town, from the city of Bridgeport, Steve Layden from the Parks Department, and Chadwick Schroeder, who's the sustainability manager in Bridgeport. And those 3 people, along with Rick Landau and myself from our organization, have worked closely together to try to take some measures to deal with the erosion in Ash Creek. Our first project was the installation of emergency plantings on the barrier spit to stop the erosion until a long-term restoration plan could be developed. And the town of Fairfield and the city of Bridgeport split that expense. And here you can see the contractor that they hired doing the plantings on the barrier spit. So that was our first successful project as a working group. You see the before on the left and the after on the right. So what can be done to save our tidal estuary? Well, first, Fairfield could do less aggressive but more frequent dredgings, and we're in discussions with them over that. And they could return the sand to the barrier spit or put it on the tidal wetlands instead of on Jennings Beach, which they have agreed to do. And actually putting a thin layer of the dredged material on the tidal wetlands is a technique. It's called thin layer deposition, which is new to Connecticut. It has successfully been used in North Carolina and other areas of the southeastern United States, but has not been permitted by Connecticut Deep until this point. So we are proposing a project, a restoration project that would actually use thin layer deposition. And we've talked to Connecticut Deep about that. And they're open to discussing this. Large scale restoration. So we've been talking to over 100 people at Connecticut Deep, Circa, you know, the municipalities, anybody that we could find. We have been talking to over the past 18 months. We've had over 100 meetings to try to figure out how to get the money and a plan to save the Ash Creek Tidal Estuary. Finally, there's long-term management. Fairfield and Bridgeport need to jointly manage the tidal estuary. We need a governing structure and local ordinances to stop dock proliferation in the shallow tidal estuary and to stop the motorboats which scour the mud flats and so many other things that over time degrade the tidal estuary bit by bit. But, you know, up to this point, we haven't had any governing structure. Now, this is the progress that we've made at this point. We have made some progress. As I mentioned, Fairfield has agreed to return the sand to the barrier spit or the tidal wetlands and not put it on Jennings Beach. We actually were able to partner with Save the Sound, and they agreed to take on the Ash Creek Restoration Project. This is huge because they only do 12 restoration projects a year. And they submitted a $700,000 grant to Connecticut Deep's Climate Resilience Fund in order to fund studies and the development of a shovel-ready plan for the restoration of Ash Creek. And now that's just the plan, that's not the implementation. They would need to go after federal funds to actually get the money for the restoration, which would likely run into the millions. And I know you're familiar with the Climate Resilience Fund because Becky was on the panel that I was on where we were discussing ways that we could go after those funds. So I'm sure Fairfield is going after some of those funds as well. And then long-term management, the working group that we have formed to address short-term issues. Hopefully we'll be able to carry that forward into long-term issues. We are in the midst of publishing our new master plan. We developed one 10 years ago, but of course that didn't include sea level rise or climate change because those weren't hot topics back then. So what we would like to do is use the new master plan, which will be about 100 pages, to begin discussions with stakeholders, you know, on a governing structure for the Ash Creek Tidal Estuary. And we'd like to come back to you next month to discuss that master plan. It hasn't been published yet, but as soon as it is, I think there will be things in there that that your committee would really be interested in because it covers the Fairfield side as well as the Bridgeport side. So if anybody wants to learn more about the issues in Ash Creek, please go to our issue-specific website, saveourspit.org. It's a catchy title, and we did that on purpose. And that will give you basically the documents, any documents, the studies, to take a look at that, and also progress updates will be on this site as well. Sorry, this is stuck. I'll end the screen sharing now. All right, so that's it.
Thank you, Gail. That was very well presented.
Very
Thank you
good.
very much. And we're glad to see that you are doing this work. Our fingers are crossed that we get the Climate Resilience Track 2 money through
Right.
Save the Sound. I hope we do.
For all of us, yes.
Yeah. I'd like to, open it up to the board first, if there's any questions, and then I could take any
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
from the public.
I had one question. Yeah, you give $700,000 for studies. That's a lot of money to study. What are you doing with that money?
Well, unfortunately, it's a complicated area. And so Connecticut Deep is really, really concerned that we not affect the navigable channel. And if you put the sand down in certain areas, you know, it could just go back into the channel. So, you know, and fill it back up again and cause more dredging costs for the town of Fairfield. So, you know, they want some sand circulation studies, maybe, you know, wave studies. There are just apparently a lot of studies that are required when you go to do anything like what's called filling in of a tidal estuary. There are so many laws against that because tidal estuaries used to be filled in and it was a bad thing. Now we want to put, you know, sedimentation into tidal estuaries and make it a good thing. But it's really hard with the current laws, the way they are, to allow that. It's like first do no harm, you know? So unfortunately, there's a lot of studies that need to take place in order to determine exactly what type of restoration should occur and where it should occur and how it should occur.
And if you're gonna make it shovel-ready, it would have to have
Yeah.
design and pre-permitting as well, so that takes a lot of time and energy.
700,000 is a lot.
It will take every bit of that. It's gonna
Okay.
need modeling.
Yeah.
I am not scared of that number at all. I think it's gonna need
Sure,
that.
okay.
And based upon the meeting we did have with Deep several months ago before we did the little restoration we did with the planting, you know, they were saying that we really need to understand the flow of the water and how the sand moves through that so that
Right.
we can prepare the right type of resilience and mitigation.
Yeah, I mean, Save the Sound didn't want to come in that high, but it's just simply where the engineering firms came in when they, you know, went through all the studies that would be required to get the permits.
Any other questions from the board? Paul Andino, I noticed that you're on now. I don't know, is Peter Wiswell on? I don't see him.
No, I don't see Peter. Paul has been on since like 7:02.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
all right.
No, so Gail, this is just a primer to make us excited about getting the full report next month. And
This is
is the
the
focus-
teaser. Yeah, this is the trailer.
is the focus of next steps to identify an appropriate organization involving the two municipalities with the Ash Creek Conservation Association?
For a governing structure?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know what shape the governing structure will take, but I'm assuming it would be some combination of the town of Fairfield, the city of Bridgeport, and the Ash Creek Conservation Association.
But is that a primary next step? What's
That's
the
not the
prim-
next step. The primary next step is, the restoration, going after this study to try to get the grant money. So I don't know when we're going to hear from that because Connecticut Deep said it depends on the number of applications they get, and they're not giving us a date when they're getting back to us. But the governing.
So that application has been made by the Ash Creek Conservancy Association?
Well, it was made by Save the Sound. We partnered with Save the Sound. We'd be a sub-awardee, so we would be doing things like outreach and liaison work with the municipalities, So we'd be, the boots on the ground here, but Save the Sound would be interfacing with the engineering firms, getting the permits, they would be doing they'd be doing all the studies and creating the shovel-ready plan.
Got it.
Yeah, so the governing structure is definitely something that is on, that we want to tackle. But right now, we're just so concerned that we're running out of time to restore the tidal estuary, that all of our energy has been spent focusing on trying to find the right partner to work with, which turned out to be Save the Sound, and then going after this grant. And so we had very little time to do this. So, you know, I mean, we've just been going full throttle to try to, you know, go after the monies for a restoration plan.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Okay, well, I just
Tim-
want to thank you guys. You've been great supporters of everything that we've been doing, and we really appreciate it.
We are great supporters, and we would actually love to be kept in the loop as you progress. Would love to be able to attend some of the meetings and as you see fit. So we'd like to continue.
Absolutely, we will keep you in the loop as much as you want to be in the loop.
All right. If anyone from the public has any questions, raise your virtual hand or your actual hand if you're in.
I'm here for Penfield.
Okay. Otherwise, we're going to move on to Penfield. But if anyone has a question, we're going to look and see if we see any hands
You
raised.
can also go in the chat.
Or put your name in the chat if you have any questions. All right, hearing none. Gail, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you so
and
much.
Thank your team for doing all the work they're doing for the Ash Creek Tidal Estuary, because that is, as you said, a very critical part of our marsh and you know, managing our floodwaters as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, good night.
Good night, Gail.
With that, I'm going to move on to what will probably be our bigger discussion, which is the discussion on the evolving plans for the Penfield Pavilion. And then we will have public comment at the end of that. So the way I had thought, first of all, I'd like to kind of give an introduction to the subject, to both the people in the room and the people on the Zoom. We are the Flood and Erosion Control Board. We have not been negotiating directly with FEMA. That has been done by the town. We are aware of the sequence of events and what has happened, and our goal today is to answer as many of the questions that have been submitted either ahead of time or possibly today. But there are going to be lots of things we can't answer because we've not been directly involved. So we are not going to be able to tell you exactly what FEMA has said because we have not been in those conversations. We're also not going to be able to tell you things like what the construction costs are based on, because those were all negotiated by the town. However, Brenda has been very, very open and is very willing to have conversations. You can call her directly. She has said that. She is willing to answer questions. She also has said that there will be chances for public comment 3 different times. Once we get the FEMA okay on what is right now a very conceptual plan, the subject will go in front of the Board of Selectmen, then the Board of Finance, and then the RTM for funding requests. And in each of those meetings, there will be a chance for public comments and to ask questions. So she does want this to be a very transparent process. She does want people to be able to ask any questions. My goal today is to maybe answer a lot of your questions, but I'm just trying to give you a honest feeling that I probably won't be able to answer 100% of them. So with that, I thought it would be most helpful to go through a timeline of what has transpired. And that way, which actually were a lot of the questions that came up, but I think so long as we all sort of have the understanding of what happened. It started with Superstorm Sandy, which was October 29th of 2012. And after that, the town applied for what's called a FEMA, a major disaster grant. They applied through DEEP. So FEMA approved the award, and they did what is called a project worksheet. So PW 680 was given. And the way FEMA calculates their award and what they would give us is based upon an analysis of replacement value versus repair. They determined that the damage was sufficiently enough, it was more than 50% the value of the structure, that they were awarding us, and PW 680 was specifically called out as a complete replacement of the pavilion as opposed to a repair. So that's what they approved, that's what the town got, and that's what we started on our project. Once we got into it a little bit, and in PW 680, it stated that the building would be rebuilt in the existing footprint, and it would also be elevated per codes and standards. So just so you know, the codes and standards, would be a 15.5-foot finished floor based upon a base flood elevation of 13. So, actually a foot higher. They actually approved it as a foot higher than what we actually built. The town started to get into the work and realized that they would rather do a renovation versus a full replacement. So in order to change, when you apply for a grant, you can't just change your mind. You have to then supply basically a revised scope of work. And then FEMA will decide if they're going to approve the revised scope of work. So we did actually submitted a request for a revised scope of work on April 29th of 2016. However, in the meantime, a couple other things had happened. And I'm going to back up a little bit. Between Irene and Sandy, a wooden bulkhead is in place in front of the Penfield Pavilion that basically was almost I think it was elevation 11, correct me if I'm wrong.
That sounds right.
And so that was there to, in the town's mind, protect the pavilion. Unfortunately, we never actually got it permitted or approved by DEEP. So, DEEP came, so we basically, what happened is we also I think it was February of 2016, applied for additional grant funds. And we applied for grant funds from the state of Connecticut, Department of Housing grant money. And what that triggers is a DEEP review of the flood management certificate. So DEEP did a site visit on March 1st of 2016, and they found that unpermitted bulkhead. And they said, you can't have that bulkhead here. You have to take it out. Because there was no coastal site plan review, we didn't approve it. So the town was asked to take it out. They also, on 3/9 of 2016, requested that the riprap revetment that was on the plans not be installed. Unfortunately, the town did install the riprap anyway, so DEEP came back for a second visit on.
I'm sorry, what was that called?
A riprap revetment. It's basically, you've got a bulkhead that's wood, and then you put riprap, which is stones, that act as, extra,
The water side,
yeah, extra support, if you will.
okay.
And that was on our plans. We hadn't actually put it in yet. They told us not to put it in because they saw the plans. We did it anyway. So they came back for a second site visit, and they saw in April of 28th of 2016 that we'd installed it. So now they're not super happy with us. But DEEP and the FEMA rep on May 9th, had a meeting with Fairfield and raised another concern, which is basically had to do with our revised scope of work that we had submitted. And they were concerned that we were not following the National Floodplain Insurance Plan, freedom of obstruction requirement, which is in Technical Bulletin 5. What a freedom of obstruction requirement means is that you need to be able to have floodwater flow freely underneath the building. Any of you who might have raised your homes in the beach area know that if you're in the VE zone, which is what the pavilion is in, you can have structures of pilings that hold your house up, and you have to have breakaway walls or breakaway mosquito screens. But you basically cannot have walls that would obstruct or in any way hinder the free flow of water to go underneath the building. So that was a little bit of a concern when they saw the plans, because we had plans that showed our grade beams going at a higher level than the natural grade. So this is where it gets kind of.
What was the natural grade again?
So this is where there's difference of opinion. The Fairfield opinion of the natural grade was that it was the 11 feet, which is what had been built up by the bulkhead. The DEEP and FEMA opinion of the natural grade was that it was 8 feet, between 8 and 9 feet. And they based that on 2 different LiDAR, which is basically a scanning of the elevation, where you can see how high the elevation is at various parts on the beach. So think of it as a scanning. And one of the LiDARs that was done in 2004 showed an 8.41 average grade. Another LiDAR that was done in 2006 showed between 8 to 9 average grade. It was a little bit different across the sites. The town submitted quadrangle maps from 1951, 1960, 1970, and 1984 they were all done, and this is where it gets kind of crazy, they were all done to NAV 1929, so the, basically the way that FEMA looked at grades changed. And up until a certain time, it had been done by NAV 1929, and then it got changed to be NAV 88, and that's what we all use today. So you have to do a translation between NAV 20, you need to know if your map was done to a NAV 29 or a NAV 88.
NAV 29 being 1929?
1929, yes. So the correct NAV 88 for those quadrangle maps was 8.91 feet. The town also submitted another quadrangle map, these are all done by the US Geological Survey, in 2012, that supposedly used NAV 88 datum, and it showed a grade 10, but review, the US Geological Survey did change the contour lines from the 1984 map, so the actual NAV 88 was actually 8.91. So we also provided maps of a 1935 topographical map that showed a 5.46 NAV 88, which is much lower. A 1968 zoning map showed it as 6.91, and basically, these were all town supplied documents, and nothing we showed them showed that it was 11 feet. Everything we showed them showed somewhere between 8 and 9. So that is why FEMA is firmly of the opinion that the natural grade is between 8 and 9. Now, you can add fill to make the grade that is the visual grade look higher, and that's indeed what we did. We did it two ways. By making the bulkhead at 11, we actually accrete sand. When you put a hard structure in front of an area, you can sand actually accretes around it. I don't know if any of you guys have done sand fences or Rosa rugosa or seagrass. I mean, all of those things help you build up sand. It doesn't mean it was the natural grade, because you put a structure, you put a thing in to allow that sand to build up. And that's what our bulkhead did, according to FEMA, is it allowed the grade to be higher than the natural grade through an artificial placement of a bulkhead, even though we took the bulkhead away. So that's one big issue that FEMA had. So going back to our timeline, there's all sorts of things you have to do when you work with government organizations. So we had to file in June 1 a request from FEMA from the town and DEEP for a technical assistance on whether the revised scope would comply with the National Flood Insurance Program. So you have to do all these filings. So we did that in June. In August 9th of 2016, FEMA came back and expressed concerns about the revised scope of work. They were concerned that it didn't elevate to 15.5 feet, which is what both our town zoning regulations as well as the National Flood Insurance say, that you have to be a foot above base flood elevation. So we showed them plans that showed a 14.5 foot.
Was the construction already started by then?
Yes, the construction had actually started, we believe, back in February or March. And DEEP was actually very concerned when they came and they saw that we had started construction without even doing the revised scope of work, or certainly getting it approved. So that did not endear us to DEEP or FEMA either. So, yes, we went ahead and started work without having any approvals. So that exacerbated the situation a bit.
I know I'm not supposed to be whose decision was that?
We have no comment to make on that topic.
I have no way to know that. I don't, it is a big
Yes,
question.
it is.
But let me give you my point of view at this point. A lot of things happened that shouldn't have happened, that were done incorrectly per the FEMA regs. I mean, there were lots of things that should have been done differently. The reality is we're where we are today.
Yeah.
That's in the past. It happened. Now we have to figure, what do we do going forward? What are our options? So
That makes sense, but
yes, we don't want it to happen again.
that person, whoever it is, should we not invest some time in figuring out who that person who made the decision was? Because that person is probably still making the decision for all of it.
I think it's multiple.
At this point.
My guess is that it's Joe Michelangelo, who was the head of the DPW, but I don't know, and, frankly, that's a question you would have to ask the town.
Wasn't there a committee that,
There was a building committee, but I talked to members of the building committee, and they are saying that they were told they were not kept in the loop.
They weren't in the loop.
They weren't in the loop, is what they're saying, so,
Well, the thing is that, it's a huge responsibility that somebody
yeah.
take that on and make that decision.
So let's save this question for Brenda. What I'm hearing people, at least in this room, say, and I assume some people on the Zoom as well, is they would like the town to try to figure out what the root cause of the bad decisions were, such that it won't happen again. Not because we can change it, it is what it is,
We don't want it
but
to happen
just so
again.
it can't happen again. So I think that is something we need to ask the town.
Becky, weren't the letters from FEMA addressed to Mike Tetro?
No, not till 2019. They were mostly
There was
addressed.
I have a 2018.
And maybe there's an 18 one that was. Most of them were addressed to Joe
August 28th.
Michelangelo.
November 28, 2018.
Tetro, and Michael.
But by that time,
By then, the pavilion was done. The construction was completely done by then, so it was moved.
Is it normal for not a town representative to be here when they know they can answer so many questions for everyone?
Brenda and I talked about whether there should be a public meeting, and I said I was gonna be doing this in the flood and erosion control. She wanted me to make sure that you all knew that she was open for any questions, and she would very much welcome any questions from anyone in this room or on the Zoom, if I'm not able to answer them, which there are some I cannot answer.
Well, that was the question, we just asked who was accountable for this,
Yeah,
and you
and
can't answer.
I can't answer
And
that,
just under-
and,
Maybe she can.
yeah, so I think that's one I would take to Brenda.
Understand that, and I don't know if you have or not, but there is the, presentation that the administration, Brenda and Tom Bremer, the video is available, the presentation they made to the combined Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the RTM back on August 30th, I believe, was the date. And in that, I mean, you can look at that, what she shared at that time. But contrasting with what had gone before, she has repeated a number of times when I was there that she's not going, her administration is not going forward until they have black and white from FEMA saying, yes, you can go and do this fix to the pavilion. Until then, it's not before a judge in a court, but it's basically in litigation. Nothing is resolved. So until it's resolved, my personal opinion is that she's hesitant to say a lot about what went forward because it's still not
you're saying,
a done
what's
deal.
in litigation now exactly? What's being litigated?
Well, we have a notice
Just
of violation.
the whole topic of who did what, when,
Okay, so it's
why,
about the past.
that put us where we are today.
Okay, so that's in, so
And
nobody's saying anything.
she's hesitant to comment on that because, well, one thing, we are where we are and we want to go forward so that the residents have use of the pavilion again. And, FEMA has not given their blessing to our plan of altering the structure and clearing the notice of violation. And we are not privy to all of that information, we're not hiding anything, we don't know either, okay? But we don't feel empowered to comment on it, because it's not our purview.
So continuing with the timeline, we did get a rejection from DEEP on the application to get the DOH funds, and that would have been, I think, around $500,000, because we were not willing to raise the building to the 15.5 lowest structural member elevation. We wanted to keep it at the 14.5, so we missed out on that. We then, as was mentioned, that we'd actually already started work while we were going back and forth between FEMA, while we still did not have an approved revised scope of work, because they did not actually approve our revised plans. We were, however, continuing to do the construction. So in the August 2016 note, they were very clear. They said they had concerns about the revised scope of work. They had concerns that it wasn't being elevated to 15.5 feet. They put in that letter a financial hold on the money for PW 680, and said it would issue a formal request for information, and suggested that no construction should continue or it would compromise future eligibility of the funds.
No,
So
those total funds are over $3 million.
4.3 million,
And yet we continue to.
and we continued to build. So we were
We don't
told,
know who yet.
we were basically told by FEMA, let's work this out, we're not approving your plans. We will probably, if you continue this way, we will probably not give you the money, so we suggest that you don't keep construction going. But we'd already started work, so I think
My understanding is that the cost of the pavilion renovations have exceeded the 4.2.
Yes.
It was 7 million.
Yeah, that money has already been paid.
It was 7 million for the
We
region.
bonded it and paid for it, so the town has paid for this. We were hoping to get a reimbursement of 4.3, but they were pretty clear in their August note that
So we're
if
gonna
we.
spend additional money, more than $4.3 million to raise the structure so that we can get $4.3 million?
No, we're not gonna ever get it back.
We're never getting,
We're
they're
never
never.
We're never gonna get it back.
gonna get it. It's gonna cost.
Well, I don't
Well,
think,
you know what?
we
That's
know
not fair.
that definitively.
We don't know that. It is my read of, it is my
Yeah,
personal
that's-
read
that's
of the documents that we, did multiple appeals. We exhausted our appeals, and they told us that we are not
Wasn't it
eligible
like a
because
300-page document?
there were multiple
Yeah.
long documents. So I cannot say for certain we won't get it back. It is my personal opinion, we will not be getting it back.
But the thing that you have to understand is that the next renovation, because of the oil contamination.
Yeah, we're getting to that, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
gonna
gonna be another,
That's a
whole
whole other
$13 million.
Only money.
All right, so continuing with our timeline, so basically, you know, we have to then send a letter, which is a request for information. The town responded to that request for information in, October of 2016. Then in October of 2017, FEMA came back and said the town was still not in compliance with the minimum floodplain management from 44 SCFR 60-.3. FEMA and basically in November, 1 month later, FEMA and the town, and I assume Deep had a teleconference, and they allowed the town to provide additional information, so we're now basically going back and forth, trying to convince them that we're right, and they're saying you're not. So that's basically what happened in 2017. In November of 2018, they had the final National Floodplain Insurance, determination, and they noted that we are not complying with technical bulletin number 5. They said that the town had created obstructions because the grade beam was above the natural grade of 8 to 9 feet. So their big issue is, and I don't know if we want to put up, does everyone know what a grade beam is?
Well, can you just like explain where the grade beam is not underneath the structure itself,
It's
in the foundation?
In technical number 5, they allow
In the
the grade beam to be at or below the natural grade of the beach. So they're saying the grade beam had to be at or below that 8 to 9 feet, because that's what they say, based on all the documentation the town provided, the natural grade is. So, and we were actually at a 10.7 is where the grade beam was. So we would then be considered an obstruction, which is against their rules. You can't have you have to have a free-flowing water, and you have to be freedom from obstruction.
So,
And so the grade beam acted as an
the
obstruction.
grade beam is a beam?
Yeah, so basically it's a cement foundation. If you think of it as like,
You wanna put up that?
yeah, we have a drawing.
Can you?
You're gonna have to
Let
get,
me
because
share
when I
my screen.
rebooted, oh, yeah, you can share.
Share, yeah,
ahead.
so Dick, if you can put up that,
How do I,
Okay, so go to your share,
go to your share screen, press share.
share screen,
okay, and then you
Press
have
share.
to find your,
You just press share,
share?
and then you're gonna go onto your desktop.
Yeah, you're gonna go on
and
your-
look and try to find the grade
There you
beam
go.
picture.
is that it?
That's it, that's a grade beam. So basically, you
Okay.
make a cement,
Yeah,
So it's
block.
that whole
It's a-
footprint.
it's the whole
underneath
foundation.
the building.
so you have piles that go down into the sand, then you have your grade beam, then you have piles that come up, and the building sits on those piles that come up.
Okay,
There-
so
there is
here's
give lateral support to the pole.
here's the plan that is presently before FEMA. The orange round pieces here, that's the remaining pieces of the existing grade beam after this is all said and done. The blue pieces are the new grade beam, and you can see how the grade beam ties together all of these support points. And the grade beam, in turn, is the top of a bunch of piles. These piles go down 30 feet, and they're like 20-ton piles. So each of these piles can theoretically support 20 tons of mass. And the problem is that this, again, the orange pieces, this is the existing grade beam, and the top of that grade beam is at elevation 11. What FEMA wants to see is no obstruction above 8 feet. So the new top of the new grade beam will be 8 feet. So that leaves 3 feet between the top of the existing grade beam and the top of the new grade beam. Now, in order to support the building, we have to extend the columns. So we're using a 2x2 cube, a 2 foot by 2 foot cube of concrete as part of the column that is supporting.
And that's part of the original grade.
That's part of the original grade, okay? So they're gonna go in, they're gonna take one row of structure. They're gonna shore up the pavilion structure itself so it doesn't move, and then they're gonna go and they're gonna cut the concrete, cut squares out of the continuous lattice work of the grade beam,
Of the original grade beam,
and then they're going to
Then they're going-
construct the new lattice work below that.
3 feet lower.
So what they're accomplishing is FEMA's, requirement that there be no horizontal obstruction between the grade and the elevation of the building. I heard that one communication said, well, if they're gonna drop the grade beam, the whole pavilion's gonna go down. No, the pavilion is going to stay right where it is. It is not going to change in
So
elevation.
they're not moving the pavilion.
No.
No, we're not moving it into
So
the
basically,
parking
dig
lot
the
again like
panels
we did
under,
last time.
So,
cut out the grade beam, construct a new grade beam.
So, as,
Does any sand have to be removed in order to do,
Yes.
Yes,
Well, and we have to anyway, so
and
let's,
do you know how much sand has to be removed?
a
yes.
bunch.
But it's other studies to like,
Well,
figure that out.
so the sand is being removed for 2 reasons. The first reason is because there's contaminated fill
Yeah,
under the
right.
building.
right.
So that contaminated fill is projected to cost anywhere from $4 to $5 million to just remove the contaminated fill. And what we need to do is keep testing till we know that it's not contaminated. So we'll remove.
Have they
what we think.
tested for contamination?
Yes, they have actually done lots of borings.
And what have they found?
They have found PCBs, they found lots of contamination, and they know where the borings are, so they're gonna try to get those. But the way the testing has to work is try to get all that contaminated fill out. We then have to test again to make sure we got it all. If we didn't, we have to keep going down.
Was that contamination placed there, or just?
Yes,
Yeah,
it was
with
placed
that
there
fill
from the
pile.
fill pile. It was trucked over.
And as far as the parking lot, do they have to rip up the parking lot?
Parts of it, yes. So the
Parts
parking
of
lot also has contaminated fill under it, so we will need to be ripping up parts of the parking lot
But
where we've done the borings, where we've seen the contamination, we have
if
to
the
rip it up.
parking lot is covered in ash.
It doesn't matter, it's PCBs, it is,
What-
EPA is asking.
The level of PCBs exceeds the point at which you have to remediate it.
And groundwater could get
I have no idea what the
bring
numbers
PCBs
are.
down to
If
the
the
water.
PCBs were 1 part per million, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Anything over 3 parts per million
It's
is
in a
no,
floodplain.
you don't have a
It's
choice.
beating a dead horse.
And we're
Yeah.
at 4 parts per million. Those are not real numbers.
And it's been like that for what,
Uh,
6 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that comes into play is that when you're near the coastline like that, the prism of water, high tide, low tide, the water comes through the sand in and out, and some of those PCBs can move toward, it's downhill, it's
Leach
downhill
out.
toward the water. so
How are
they
they
can
taking
move
all the
toward water.
contaminants out from under the pavilion?
So they will be digging it out, and they will have
With
actually
not shovels.
they will actually have a big,
I heard it was
air thing,
vacuum.
it's a
Yeah,
vacuum
they're
thing,
gonna
a big
vacuum.
vacuum will go down, and then they'll keep testing, and then they'll test again, they'll dig some more out, if it doesn't test, they'll go back and
How
forth.
much, how
until
much
they get
fill,
it.
how many feet of fill is under there?
They don't know, because they got a number from Julian of how much was brought over there, but we don't know if that's actually an accurate number. So we're just gonna have to keep going until we are sure with repeated testing that we do not have any contaminated fill. That's a requirement from the EPA.
Okay, so the
We-
minimum of this project is $4 to $5 million.
4 to 5 is the
Again,
current
just
estimate.
to start.
Just
Just
to-
to go.
But if we're lucky,
Contaminated
if we're
first.
lucky, it could be a little less, but 4 to
Yeah,
5 is,
well, that's.
and if there's more fill, it could be up to I mean, we don't know.
Take the worst case scenario here,
Yeah.
so.
So let's say 4 to 5 for that. Then basically to do this grade beam plan, they have had they've had a professional estimator come in and give them an estimate to cut the existing grade beams and then pour cement for the new grade beams and tie this all
So
together.
they have to chop up the concrete and pull out the
Yes.
chunks of concrete,
Yes.
and they go underneath to do that.
They have to go underneath to do that, so they're gonna have all this little equipment that'll go under. They will have actually gotten all of the fill out by then, because we would have gotten the contaminated fill, but we're still gonna have to go in and cut all these grade beams and then put, wood down and pour new.
I don't wanna interrupt your presentation, so.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should let you finish.
Yeah, let-
Going through this, and then.
So that amount.
I know.
So while we're on this, I'm stepping away from my timeline, but, so let me just give you the cost that, the professional estimator has given for this remediation. The 4 to 5 was for removing the contaminated fill. That is between 9 and 12 is the estimated cost to do all of this remediation. And that includes putting walkways back and doing everything that needs to be done. So it's not just the cutting, but it's basically
So
making
you're really
it,
looking at like maybe 17 or 12.
could be, yeah, could be. 9
I
to 12.
generally, with construction,
9
generally
to
err on the high side.
So that's a professional estimator right now of what this would cost to do this work.
The 8.9, this is the older new.
This is the
Plan.
proposed new
This is the
plan.
proposed
The blue is the new.
So the 8.9 is the bottom of the blue,
It's the top of the blue.
The top of the blue, and then,
It's 8 to 9, and they're asking us to do
and
it
they're
at 8.
saying that's what
Yeah.
our, okay, and
That's
then,
what our natural.
and
is.
underneath are obviously the piles, and those piles are in the
They go,
sand.
they go down.
They're in the sand.
Yeah.
So that blue is literally sitting on top of the
Right.
8.9.
The top
The
of
top
the
of the
new
blue
sand, the top
is-
of the new
is
sand will be at 8 feet,
Will be,
The top of the,
the
top of the.
the top of the new beam will be,
and the sand.
the top of the new beam is at 8, and the sand will be on
Because-
either side of it. So it'll look like it's flush with the sand underneath the pavilion when you look at it.
So we're going with 8.
We're going.
So 8, so it's essentially, you're looking at a
Same
3-foot
thing as
lower
a
grade
roll
than what we
fence.
have.
Correct, that is correct.
Exactly. Now, the good news is,
What is it?
Oh, I'm just.
we don't have to do anything under the locker structure, because that is supported on a traditional timber pile.
It didn't use
System.
grade beams.
However, we do have to take some
The
sand
fill
out.
out, the contaminated
Yes.
fill.
to bring that down to elevation A too.
Yes,
We
correct.
could bring it down to elevation 8 and take the contaminated fill out. All right, so
And why is it 8 versus 8.9? You say, in regards to 8.
that is a question that I cannot
The 9
answer.
inches is.
It might wind up being 8.6,
That is a
because
question I
they're saying
can't
between
answer.
8 and 9,
No,
the historical grade was somewhere between 8
The
and 9.
plan that we have submitted to FEMA
Is
is
8
the top of the grade beam is 8.
Yeah.
I cannot answer that, and that is a question you would have to ask Brenda.
Well, yeah, because
So,
inches.
Could make a difference.
Now, the other
Not gonna make a
Definitely
news,
made a difference in Hurricane Sandy in my family room, I know that.
How is the difference, right?
the other good news, just for a quick perspective, this is, if we took a section from Fairfield Beach Road, okay, Fairfield Beach Road, the elevation is like 6 feet. It varies, it's 5, 5.5, 6.5, but Fairfield Beach Road is 6 feet. And then you have the frontal sand dune. There are 3 residences between Rickards Beach, Penfield Pavilion, Rickards Beach, 3 private residences, and then Fairfield Beach Club. So the typical slab of those private residences is at 10 feet, and that's what's shown here. And then the dune crest, closer to the water, it varies. But at Rickards Beach, the dune crest is like 13 feet. In front of those 3 houses, it's not 13 feet. So you have this dune crest at 13 feet. So the question is, when will the waves come over the dune crest? Well, this Storm Sandy, and this is from the Bridgeport Tide Station, the still water elevation of Storm Sandy was 9.2 feet. So if we have sand at Penfield that is at 8 feet, we're 1.2 feet above that sand level with the still water level during Sandy. It means it comes
a foot of water
right
will just be flowing in.
And then, in addition
We
to
got
that,
9 inches, I don't know.
in addition to that, you have the wave action that's imposed on the still water level. So as the wave crests, it's going to be something more than 9.2. As the trough of the wave comes in, it's going to be less than 9.2. The normal tide is at 3.2 feet. The mean high water. Mean high water is 3.2 feet. So on a normal day, we have 5 feet of elevation between the water and the top of the sand on Penfield Beach. So it is just storms that.
What is the height of the sand on the beach right now?
There are contour maps that show that, and they
It's
are
all-
Around 10 feet.
anywhere.
Well, no, the
There's some that
sand,
are 10.
the sand
Contour maps.
from the sand outside the footprint of the pavilion gets up to 12 feet on the
Okay,
beach.
so that means you're gonna be dropping 4 feet
No,
to
the 8 feet is only required under the pavilion structure, as I understand it. We do not have to take the entire beach and Jennings Beach and knock it all
Knock it
down to
down.
8 feet.
So, no,
So
but,
are you
but,
saying it's
it's
gonna go
only-
like
in
that?
other words, it's gotta go down
Yeah.
like this underneath the pavilion,
Right.
because it can't have to stop at the
Yes.
pavilion.
So,
Or the water will just push it under.
Right, yeah. Oh, the water.
I thought that some of it, I didn't realize that there
So,
was, I know there's
FEMA
12 feet over on Rickards and 12 feet on Durrell. I didn't realize there was 12 up there. I thought it was only like 9 to 10. You might be right. This is something I'm not sure,
I was looking, he was kind enough to send the drawings to me of different proposed barriers to try to protect the area from flooding.
so does that show?
yeah, and that, well,
But
I'll get to what
agree
I'm
to be-
looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, that seven alternate methods to mitigate flooding through the Penfield property. That was done back during the time of the
2017.
Penfield Building Committee. Because at that time, the chairman of Flood and Erosion Control Board was very vocal about, you guys are killing us here, you're gonna flood the neighborhood beyond the beach, so let's do some mitigation. So that was the genesis of that. And those are not by any means engineered, studies, anything like that, they're just conceptual, we
Right.
could do this.
So basically, now at this point, we've probably built it, because we're now at November of 2018. And the FEMA comes back with the final National Flood Insurance Plan determination. They noted that we are not in compliance. The town had created an obstruction as the grade beam was above the natural grade of 8 to 9. The FEMA disaster discovery manager also came back with a formal notice in November of 2018, saying that we are not in compliance with the minimum floodplain management of CFR, 44 CFR 60-3. Our horizontal grade beam is considered an obstruction per 44 CFR 60-3, and it's also against Fairfield's own zoning regulations. The construction plans are inconsistent with the National Flood Insurance Plan per Executive Order 11988, and that Fairfield did not get a consistency determination from DEEP as required by coastal zone management. It also mentions that starting work without approval and adding fill are not.
So how much money do we lose?
So we did not get the 4.3 million we could have gotten. They basically denied us the money. They said that we had done so many things that were not in compliance, that we were not eligible for the 4.3 million.
And you don't know who made those decisions?
We do not. So we then have, what we have right now is a notice of violation. So FEMA is basically telling us, you have a non-compliant structure.
You can plug it in.
So let me just talk a little bit about what the National Flood Insurance Plan violation means. We are part of this program that basically allows all of our town residents, because of the things that we do, to get a 10% discount on our flood insurance. Every person who has flood insurance gets a 10% discount, because we go above and beyond what the floodplain even does. They basically, National Flood Insurance Plan, if you're a participant in that, which we are, says there's regulations you have to adopt, you have to enforce those regulations, and there's some mitigation aspects. So what would happen if they removed this or put us on probation? We would not be able to have anyone get FEMA flood insurance in the floodplain, which means that unless you can get a Lloyd's of London or some other flood insurance, which
I have private.
some people have flood private, but not everyone can. And it means that if you don't have flood insurance, you can't get a mortgage. So you can't sell your home unless someone's paying cash, or they're able to find private insurance, which is hard and costly. The other problem, which I think is even worse, is that my understanding is if you are not part of the FEMA National Flood Insurance Program, you aren't eligible for FEMA grants. And most of the way we get our money to do anything in this town around disasters is we get a FEMA BRIC grant, or FEMA does a couple different types of grants. And we've gotten literally millions of dollars of these grants over the years. And if we are not eligible to apply for those, I think our wastewater treatment plant was done by that. After Sandy, a lot of people were able to elevate their
So
homes.
it's necessary.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we gotta comply. We gotta comply.
We $1 million in a cleanup after Sandy from a grant.
We got that. We dredged the Pine Creek from a FEMA grant. I mean, a lot of this money, we get a lot of money,
So if
and
they came around this area and looked at some houses that were approved by the town to build, like you were saying, that's 10, you said and they say, hey, that's not compliant.
That we would have to do it, we'd have to redo it.
Well, listen, I wanna share,
Yeah.
share
On
something
whose
too.
dime?
I got a grant for
Not
my
the
house, I live on Penfield, and I got a
For the
grant
town approved.
for $450,000. FEMA came in, they hired an architect, because I had $100,000 worth of damage, I only got 50 from insurance, I kept applying for anything, and they ended up giving me, they said they were gonna give me a $250,000 grant. They hired the architect, they tested the soil, they had 7 builders look at it, it was gonna be $350. Well, I wasn't gonna put $100,000 into the house, I had 4 kids, they were gone, and they're not gone, but they're not in the house anymore, but then, and it turned out to be $450. And they said to me, it's gotta be 15 feet up. Do you think I wanted a house 15 feet up? No, and then I asked for a elevator, because I couldn't ask for anything else. They redid the house, only the bottom, the rest was the same. I asked for an elevator, they said, there's nothing wrong with you. So I didn't get an elevator. But bottom line is, they
She's
took.
gone in a wheelchair.
I think I should have thought of something. But bottom line is, I did everything they asked me to do. And my biggest problem is what happened, what was the disconnect between the town and FEMA? I just don't get it. I mean, I had no say in the matter. They gave me $450,000, I had to stay there for 5 years, that was just up in September. And they took the lien off my house.
But now, when you did that work, were you one of the 69 sub-grantees for the program that the town had?
No.
No, this was
This was
separate.
totally different. This was totally
Okay.
different.
That's slightly different from,
Well, because I didn't put any money up. I just retired
Yeah,
from teaching.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that's totally a FEMA program. FEMA puts their blinders on, anecdotally, I have heard, they over-engineer things.
I'm sure they did.
and
You
it's
should
like-
see that
it's like-
there's 15 cement poles under my house for a raised roof.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 50, the
No,
foundation,
no.
you could build the Empire State
Right,
Building.
okay, exactly,
I
yeah.
guess the point that she's trying to make is that FEMA oversaw every aspect of that, to
Yeah.
make sure that they were compliant.
Mhm.
And how did the town get away with so many lapses?
They
just-
just
They
kept
didn't,
going.
they didn't.
They haven't.
There was a trail of,
They didn't, that's why we're where we are.
we didn't approve
Yeah,
this,
but
we
who
didn't
let
approve
it
this.
happen?
Well, they
FEMA
did, because it's done.
FEMA said,
No, but they didn't
FEMA
get
said-
away with it.
You're right,
Because
they
we're
didn't
having
get
to
the FEMA
remediate
grant.
it.
No, the question
But
is,
they
No,
did.
we're
who
also
let it
having to
happen?
remediate it.
Yeah,
We're
but
having to
who
remediate it.
let it
So
happen?
we didn't get away with it.
Who let it happen?
I don't know.
We're not answering
I
that.
can't answer
Well,
that.
I don't want it to happen again.
I know, but I can't answer that in today's
Well, Kathy,
conversation,
it
so I'd
won't
rather,
happen
I'd
to
rather
you.
stop that
It
conversation.
won't happen to you because your house is
I'm
bulletproof.
All right.
So, my house is
So
stairway.
I'm now going to
Yeah,
take,
you can talk
I,
to Ian Bass, he was on the board and the building committee, and he'll tell you, they didn't get to see some of these letters.
If I may, so my understanding is that right now, we're just going back to what was originally supposed to be compliant with FEMA back when Penville Pavilion was renovated.
No,
not completely,
because
they basically said we would
FEMA's
tear it
scope of
down.
work had the 15.5
But as far
foot.
as the elevation,
As far as the
it's
natural
same as
grade,
what was originally.
as far as the
proposed.
natural grade, but they are not, at this point, we have a conceptual plan that is in front of FEMA that we have had some discussion on. We do not, we're asking for their approval before we do a formal plan. The conceptual plan has the natural grade at 8. It does not have the building raised at 15.5. It has it keeping it 14.5, and based upon the conversations the town has had, they believe FEMA will approve that. But we do not actually have FEMA's approval at this point. So basically, they believe that FEMA will allow us to keep the building at the 14.5 as long as the natural grade is.
Essentially, when we look at the building, it's gonna look the
It's gonna look
same,
exactly the same.
with the exception of that wall.
The wall in front will not be there,
It's gonna be gone.
and you will have, a
Be able to
slightly,
look underneath it.
and you'll be able to look completely under it, and you'll have slightly longer ramps
that
because we're a
wall-
little lower.
That wall's 3 to 4 feet high, it's 3 feet the most, and that's gonna be gone.
And
And
also
you still do
behind
that
it.
instead of raising another foot to make it.
No, that would have to be gone anyway, because it's.
You're not-
It's instruction, it's instruction.
So now, FEMA, I'm just curious as far as, erosion versus, erosion
Flooding,
versus the flooding. No, was it?
all right?
Are you done?
So I think I am done with what I would like to do.
You've done a very nice job
I can't,
reconstructing.
can you read?
Reconstructing this
He said-
boondoggle.
Is
Yeah.
showing the parking lot for an issue only because of contamination, or does FEMA view the elevation using Asheville as a problem in that area as well? Does the parking lot have to be returned to historical grade?
My understanding is that they are not asking us to reduce the grade of the parking lot. They are
I
just
believe that's
we
so.
are just being asked to remove the contaminated.
Because the parking lot as it exists today
It's
is
under 8
below
feet.
the 8 feet. It's less than 8 feet.
Mhm. So I'm now going to open this up for public comments. What I'd like to do to give everyone.
Public swearing or?
No, this part is only for comments.
I'd like people to ask, I'd like people to all have a chance to ask questions, so I'm gonna ask the people in the Zoom to raise their hand and people here to raise their hand.
Or
I'd
chat?
like to try to keep it, or put yourself in the chat if you have a question, and we'll call on you each time. I'd like to try to keep it to 3 minutes each so that everyone has a chance, and we're not here till midnight. So if you could try to limit your questions, we will try to answer your questions as best we can, and we'll see what we can do. So let's start with the Zoom people, since these people here have already asked the questions, and then we'll come back and ask them. So is there anyone in the Zoom that would like to ask a question at this point? Put your name in the chat, or,
Yeah.
okay, so George Desmond, I see your hand up. If you could unmute yourself and please ask your question. Please state your name and your address for the record. Can he unmute himself, or do we have to unmute?
I put in a
I think
request.
I got it.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
A quick question. What is the level of the road outside? And how much water was on top of the road during the storm? Do you guys
Sorry,
have any?
Sandy?
Yes.
The road elevation in front of Penfield is around 6 feet. I have no idea what the water level was during Sandy because I was sitting in my house.
There was a lot
I
of
think
water.
it was 10.5 feet.
There was a lot of water.
So maybe three or 4 feet of water on top of the road. Okay.
More.
So it depends on what state of the tide, but I think that could be an,
Boat to get
And-
to my house.
The other question is, why wouldn't you want to raise the building higher? If the water level is raising, you might be in this position in 20 years where the building is way lower. If you have the opportunity to raise it now, I know it blocks views and there's a lot of negatives, but you'd probably be in the same situation in 15 or 20 years. Why not?
That's a
So I
question for the administration.
well, I can answer that,
Yeah.
because the Flood and Erosion Control Board had the request that we raise it to the 15.5, because that is what is in the National Flood Insurance Plan. It is what is in our town zoning. We recommended that. What we were told was that it would cost an additional 1 to 2 million, and the town is sensitive to how much money is already being spent on this, and they didn't want to spend an additional 1 to 2 million.
Yeah.
But you may feel free to ask that question yourselves, but that is the answer we were given.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
George, can you just say your address, since we're trying to get names and addresses, if you could?
Old Dam.
Yeah, 131 Old Dam Road, Fairfield.
Okay. Are there any other, either hands up, or I can't actually, my eyes aren't what they used to be. If you could read, if there's anyone in the
So,
chat.
Alyssa Israel says water level was exactly 5 feet after Sandy.
On the road? Okay, thank you, Alyssa. That's knowledge I don't have,
So
but,
that would mean it was about 10.5.
so 11, yeah.
Almost, it didn't, they had originally projected 11 to 14 feet storm.
Oh, sure,
It
yeah.
came in about 10.5.
Yeah, because the wind changed. Are there other questions from anyone on the Zoom that we have not been able to answer in our discussion to date? Either put your hand up or put your name in the chat, please. Yes, I have a question. That's Alyssa. Do you want to unmute yourself? And if you could state your name and your address for the record, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I can't hear you too well. I just plugged in. That is, I just have so many questions. I've read like 3 or 4 inches worth of documents related to this, and you did a great job with the history, Becky. I'm still I'm still hoping we can negotiate with FEMA in deep. I know a lot of people don't think we're still in a negotiating stage, but I just think what they're asking is a little, I guess I want to say it's insane is the first word that comes to my mind. First of all, that natural elevation, I guess my question is, why do they want to go back to what they think was the natural elevation? We know that's not the elevation now. I did see in the documentation that they think we fabricated that, or we manufactured was the word that was used. We manufactured the new beach elevation because of the timber bulkhead, but they can't say that with any certainty that that's what happened. You know, sand moves. That's just natural. Sand moves. So I just this 8-foot elevation and bringing it back to some, you know, elevation that they came up with in 2006 through a satellite map. It just seems insane to me. I don't get it. And I think spending $12 million to go back to this hypothetical elevation that they really can't prove, it just is insane. And I feel like we should challenge that still, and you know, and not move forward and really challenge that. I just think it's crazy and bizarre, and just wanted your feedback.
Well, we have challenged it multiple times. The town filed 2 very lengthy appeals trying to justify the fill. They justified it as a natural dune that connected Rickards and Durrell. They justified it by the fact that the sand had accreted, even though it was by the bulkhead. But frankly, even the town documents that were provided to FEMA all showed somewhere between 8 and 9 feet. And I read them out before, but I'll read them again. The LIDAR data of 2004, the LIDAR data of 2006, the quadrangle maps of 51, 60, 70, 84. These are all documents we provided to them, and none of them showed any grade higher than 9 feet. They were all between 8 and 9 feet. The quadrangle map of 2012, the 1935 topographical map, the 1968 zoning map, the historical, there was one historical photo that showed that it was 19.16 at nav 88. That's the most we were ever, even, and that's our documentation.
I don't know where those maps are, because I looked on the contour maps of MetroCog. You know, they're public and I can show you all how to get them. Those maps from 1968 and currently say that there's different elevations there, 10 feet behind, you know, on the road side of the pavilion.
1929, Alyssa. 16 would have been the other. 16 would have been the navigation 1929, and you have to adjust it for a little over a foot to get to nav 88. So you have to know what nav those maps were developed at, and that's part of what I think you might be getting a little confused about.
I'm sorry, Becky. I don't think I'm confused, but maybe, I don't know. The contour maps show current elevations. You know, I don't think they're going back to the old navs. Anyway, I know we've challenged it. I do agree that it has been challenged and refused, but I think it can be negotiated, and I just think there are other solutions that you saw in my email earlier today. So I'll stop.
They have the right to reject us. They have the right to take away, not give us any other grants. They have the right to take away our flood insurance, 10% premium. They have the right to do all of that if we don't comply. And it sounds like we have gone back and forth multiple times with multi-page documents trying to make the same points you're making, Alyssa, and they've rejected them time and time again. So I think, I hear what you're saying. I wish it were at least 8, 9 myself, at least that, or 9. I wish it was that, but it's not. The negotiation has been to 8 feet. And that's what's on the table right now with FEMA.
Okay, I'll stop talking and let others speak. Thank you.
Where do you live? Can you put the address for the record? just
Sure,
quickly?
679 Roland Road. I'm about 1,000 feet steps from the pavilion.
Now, one thing we didn't mention that, I think they are probably open to and that the town has agreed to, and I think this is an important point. The town has agreed to do a study to explore ways to mitigate the fact that we have now lowered the natural grade. Things like a raised road, that would keep the floodwaters from coming back, or a wall. So the fact that the town is willing to support, the neighborhood behind, I think is a very important point. Now, the study, to be fair, is, step one of getting actual something there. And $100,000 for a study, all that does is give us, we're basically gonna use the 7 items. There's been 7 potential ways to look at mitigating, this floodwater. Yeah, this is only doesn't want to do this at the same time. The town has agreed to do it, to do the study simultaneously, but let's talk about how a sequence works. So you do a study, you then have to, and that gets you to about what's called a 30% design drawing. So that says it's not enough to file for permits at this point. You then need to go to spend more money. I can't even give a number, call it 250, 300, I don't know, to do what would be 90% design drawings and permitting, and you then would discuss it back and forth with DEEP and FEMA, so that they would then agree on your plan. Then you have to go and get the implementation money. The implementation money is the actual cost to build, and that's millions. So there are multiple.
That procedure that you just said has already taken place based on the 8-foot, instead of what I think it should be, which is 9. And you think it should be 9 as well. So that's already been decided with,
No.
and that money's been,
The money hasn't been spent yet,
It
no.
has not.
So basically, what's sitting in front of FEMA right now,
And the
Is
the money has not been appropriated by the town bodies.
okay, so
Because
that's not set in
that
stone. So you-
step is waiting to get the piece of paper from FEMA that says, yes, you may. Then the administration will go to the town bodies with a good estimate of cost and saying, please fund this.
So personally, I would like to stop that right now and say, first of all, let's get the plan to 9 at the very least.
well, right
If
now,
that's what we're doing,
what-
and then also mitigation of our.
and that's something you would have to ask
The town.
the town,
But
because.
FEMA hasn't agreed to 9 feet.
Right,
Agreed
FEMA,
to
I
8.
almost don't, they agreed to 8, but that's my point. Why? Why did the town not ask for the 9, when all of our things are showing
Well, I think
8.9,
FEMA told them 8,
9?
isn't that what it?
I don't know. My hypothesis is that there was a lot of things that were wrong. We didn't build it high enough, we did lots of things wrong, and there was probably some negotiation back and forth, and they probably said, if you do it at 8, we'll let all the other stuff go and be done with it. I don't know that, you'd have to ask the town. That's a
So
hypothesis.
you think you capitulate?
I don't know. Or it
Anybody
could be
else
that
with their
FEMA
hand up
was,
or a
Bill
question?
Gerber has another question.
all right, so,
Can you read it or you want me to
no,
read
read it out, please.
Okay.
I can ask.
question-
Yeah, okay, why don't you go
You can
ahead?
do it, yeah.
Yeah, Bill Gerber, 25 Shady Hill Road, and I'm on the RTM. And what was kind of news to me over the past couple of weeks looking at this was that regardless of what we do with Penfield, even if we were to tear it down and not rebuild it, it sounds like we have to go back to around 8 feet at that stretch of the beach regardless, so that the two aren't tied. What we do with Penfield and where that beach grade is going to end up, they're not really tied anymore. Is that right?
Right. Yes, and so the two, things we got cost estimates are on basically digging it all out and lowering the grade beams and putting new grade beams in. That's the 9 to 12 million. And then if we were just to tear it down completely, we'd still have to remove the grade beams because the grade beams are too high. So we'd still have to spend a bunch of money just getting it down to the 8 feet, which is what they're requiring, but in this
But you
point,
don't build new grade beams.
we wouldn't build the grade beams at all because you'd be tearing the building down. So that would cost $8 million. So there's a lot of money either way you do it. So people might be sitting there going, why are we even rebuilding? Well, the difference between 8 and 9 to 12 is not that much, and at least we'd have a pavilion and we could enjoy it. So,
Tearing it down and removing,
because you'd have to remove all the grade beams and you'd have to still do.
And
all
remove
that.
the fill, and remove the 4 feet of fill.
And but that's still the 4 to 5 million to remove the contaminated fill.
Yeah, that's.
on top of the 8,
Immutable.
yes.
Thank
Is there
you.
another question? Alyssa has another question.
Hi, I'll turn on the video. I think I've lost my train of thought from all this. It's very upsetting. You know, Rick Grauer brought it to my attention, this lowering of the beach under the main building, the dune. It's a protective dune. And when that gets lowered, it's going to channel water fast under the building, which could destabilize the building. That's what Kevin Chamberlain basically said in his email. He said that what FEMA is asking us to do is actually worse for the building, and it's bad for the neighborhood. We we have a history of channeling water under that building because there were floodgates in that timber bulkhead. And the floodwaters came rushing through, not the timber bulkhead, but the floodgates, the doors that shouldn't have been in there, but the town put in for some reason. So we already have this experience of channeling water through a small space and destabilizing the building. So basically what FEMA is asking us to do is destabilize the building. It's worse for the building and it's really bad for our neighborhood. We just can't allow this. We have to insist and sit down with them with a mediator, and I have a good one, and hopefully it's going to work out, and I'll let you know as soon as I know that, let's just hash this out. There's an easier, better way of protecting the building and not ruining this dune. And now I know reading Kevin Chamberlain's emails, they did that on purpose. They filled in the dune there so that it would be level. They did that for a reason, and the reason was to stabilize the building and not have this channeling effect. So there were good reasons for doing what they did. I do wish they built the building to 15.5 feet. Now that's interesting. FEMA does not want the building lifted. I don't know that I just none of it makes any sense to me. So I just really think what they're asking is bad for the building, for the neighborhood, and we have to try to make them come to their senses. And I think we can. And
Okay, all I can say is their opinion and yours are different. They have technical people on their staff. They've made this determination. I don't see any I don't have any basis to believe that it would destabilize the building. I do agree that there will be additional floodwaters into the neighborhood behind, which is why we've been pushing for some sort of resilience measure on the street side. And I really believe that the town should continue to pursue that and should budget the funds for that. That is the flood and erosion's point of view, and we will continue to hold that point of view. And if you agree, you should be saying that to the town as well. I have no knowledge that it would destabilize the building. As a matter of fact, I think adding the grade beam at a lower level would be fine, because these piles go way down. They go way down.
Well, on this, just to comment on that, on this alteration effort, there will be structural engineers involved, there will be geotechnical engineers involved, so whatever winds up being there will be sufficiently strong for the conditions.
And for probably worse conditions, because I'm sure that they will do it to even more aggressive conditions.
I mean, the pilings, as you said, are in really deep. And so I don't understand how lowering the grade beams is going to make it more supportive. It's the building is very well supported already.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa.
We are going to have technical construction engineers who will be able to answer this question for you.
Okay.
But not.
Okay.
Is there another question?
Patty Zecchi?
Patty, do you want to say your question out loud that you put in the chat? You're on mute still. Got to unmute her.
But I just did that.
She
You
has
have to unmute,
You have to unmute yourself, Patty.
is it star six?
No, it's on her screen.
Oh,
She has to do it on her
The
screen.
mute,
okay. Oh, that's right, it's not the phone.
yeah.
Do another request.
You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, oh, I know. It wasn't coming up. Anyhow, I just made a statement. That's all. I don't have a question. But I did have a
Come
second
on,
comment. A second question is deep, report to the state legislature? Is that who governs deep?
DEEP is a
Deep is a state
Department.
agency that reports to the governor.
yeah,
They are guided by the laws as passed by the legislature.
yeah. So the legislator could create laws that then DEEP would comply with.
Yes.
I think we need to, and I'm sure some of this has been done, but I think we need to reach out to our state legislators on this. And I like Alyssa's idea of getting a mediator involved, considering it's just illogical to spend $9 to $12 million to reduce the grade 3 feet and then go back in and try to build a flood barrier or raise the road to contain the water that you've just let in because you've reduced. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And I think the state legislators really need to help us on this. That's what we
Okay,
have.
I can tell you that they've been involved twice. They were, Jim Himes, our state legislators went to Jim Himes's office and asked him to, his office to step in back during the original part of the appeals back and forth. And they were told that, FEMA was has to hold firm to the, the Floodplain Management Act and all of the Coastal Management Acts and the National Flood Insurance Plan Acts, and this is against those acts. I believe that our state legislators are again coming up with a list of questions. So if people want to forward questions to the Flood and Erosion Control Board, that would be then forwarded to our state legislators and Jim Himes, we would be happy to do that. It needs to be within the next probably several days though, because we are trying a second time. It was done once, we didn't get anywhere, we're going to try it again.
Has anyone thought about having Brenda reach out to the governor and have a meeting with the governor?
You can ask Brent.
We're talking about 3 feet
I know.
to spend $9 to $12 million. And in this economy that we're all in, I just can't see where a fiscally responsible legislator or governor would allow this to happen. I really don't. I think we haven't gone high enough up the ladder.
I can't speak to that. You would have to ask Brenda. I'm sorry.
I will call Brenda. I will, but
Yeah.
just put it out there. Becky and the board, thank you. This was a wonderful timeline. A lot of research has been done to put into this, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Patty. Are there any other questions, either from people here or on, if they want to raise their hand or put them in the chat?
I have,
Yes.
and it really comes down to all this stuff about the pavilion, the Ray Romeo. I'm gonna start my timer now.
Address, please.
420 Birch Road. My main concern, I think, I don't understand why we have a dune on Rickards Beach that theoretically could not be continued to where the wall is as you head towards the Ralph Pavilion. And my feeling is that, first of all, this is a disaster. We should just cut our losses and get rid of the pavilion, look for some other alternatives in terms of how to service the public as a beach. I don't understand why, and I know you tried to explain to me why we can't extend the dune. I'm concerned about my property. I've lived here since 1986. Lowering this is going to allow flooding from lesser storms. Okay, and if you have landscaping, if you have outbuildings, if you have pool equipment, if you have swimming pools, you have your garage, even if you're FEMA compliant, all those things are gonna get damaged.
We agree with you.
And I don't think it's just okay for FEMA to come in and say, okay, do this. We don't give a crap about our neighborhood and what's gonna happen. We've lived here, we pay a lot of taxes to live here. I think we have a right to have something considered to protect our neighborhood if we're gonna make this change.
And that's exactly what Flood and Erosion Control Board is pushing
Okay,
for. So we
now-
have a study that will look at different
But
options.
that study is going to be executed when? After this?
No, it's gonna be concurrent with.
Concurrent means when they're already starting the
Well, the
changes.
study is, so what the study will do is put a different structure in place to mitigate the flooding that you described. We're not gonna be able to do anything with the pavilion, because that's gonna be to the 8 feet for
Right.
FEMA agreement.
Right.
But what you can do is put things behind it on the street side that would keep the floodwaters from coming back.
You guys, your position on this is, and I talked to Ian Bass. Ian said he thinks that the water comes down from the other residential properties and the beach club and.
Oh, that's
It
true.
does. That's
That's true.
absolutely true.
Absolutely.
But you're still reducing the volume. You could
Right.
protect the neighborhood from the degree of volume of water that's coming out from under the pavilion.
Well, you bring up a really good point, which is that if you look at our total 2.5 miles of coastline from this end of Jennings all the way down to, call it the Sasko Hill, if you will, there are multiple points along that stretch that are 8 feet. So the area that, there are multiple points of 8 feet. Some of them are through private homes. There's the one that's the Roland, the Fair Acres walkway that goes along Roland, that's 8 feet. I mean, that's FEMA's point. FEMA basically says the water's gonna go where the water's gonna go. And you've got so many holes that filling this one hole is gonna maybe reduce a little bit of the water, but you're still gonna have water coming this way and this way.
You're reducing the rate of flow by.
But you're still gonna have it coming in here.
Right,
having
but
coming here,
by
coming
reducing the
here.
rate of the flow as the storm, say, comes through, like Sandy comes through and passes, may actually reduce the severity of the flooding.
If there's a fire and there's smoke in the house, the smoke's gonna go where the smoke's gonna go, but you're gonna close the door behind you and you leave the area of smoke.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and that's why we're proposing to do some mitigation behind this. But the
Right.
reality is, to really keep that area from flooding, we need to close all those holes.
Yeah.
Now, some of those holes can be closed through temporary things, like, sandbags 6 feet high, which we can put, the walkway between Roland,
Yeah.
that's an easy thing that we could put up
I
there.
mean, you know where the Scandinavia Club is?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, that's very low. That building's very low. Was it flooded when Sandy came through?
No.
Because it
No.
has a big,
That's
the Army
protected
Corps
by
has
the-
put
by
a
the
big
dike.
dike.
Dike,
Dike,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do we, chop liver?
Well, you know what, Army Corps wanted to do.
Where the water's gonna
Oh,
go, but it
Army
didn't
Corps
go
wanted to
there.
do a dike back in the 60s, and all the people on Fairfield Beach Road said, a dike in front of my house? No way, Jose.
Well, now we're saying, you just, Jose.
I know, the time has passed.
Well,
We missed our dike chance, darn it.
But the dune that's in place there made a huge difference.
Yes, it did.
Because we knew families, when we moved in,
Actually, some of the water did come around. The water really
Right,
came
but-
down.
But not the same.
but
It really did.
the families that used to live there in the late 60s before they put the dune up, they used to say that it was commonplace for the water to come into their backyards, through the street. They would ice skate through their backyards.
Yeah.
So obviously, that dune makes a difference.
It makes a difference,
Yeah.
but let's be honest too, because in addition to the little holes that you can see
Yeah.
along the shore, the water comes up through the catch basements and through, it's coming up in the back area anyway, because just the pressure of the water is so strong.
But
There's a difference between groundwater coming up and.
It's not groundwater, she's saying from the storm drain.
Oh, okay.
Storm drain.
The storm drain.
And that's another thing that they're trying to address.
But your proposal is,
Ductile
your thought,
versus,
thinking on this is that some
flat roof
mitigation. Makes
I
a
think
difference.
some mitigation would help, and I have been asking, as our Flood and Erosion Control Board has voted to ask the town to look at mitigating it, because I do believe it would help a little bit.
What, is there any way we could piggyback the mitigation requirement on the renovation of pavilion? Contingent on the fact that we're gonna have these mitigations in place?
It won't be done then, but I did actually request that we, allocate the funds and approve them all now as part of this
Why
renovation.
wouldn't it be done simultaneously, because it could flood literally the next day?
Yeah.
Because it takes too long. So the way that we have, you saw how long this whole
It's
FEMA.
been 10 years.
So-
How much longer do they anticipate this process to get the
So this-
approval to maintain?
So the Penfield
Right.
project itself will take about 12 to 18 months, so that we won't have it for this summer, we'll have it for the following summer. The process to get the mitigation is, you do a study, which is gonna take 8 months. That study then has to be, we start our negotiations with FEMA and DEEP. That could go back and forth. They say, I don't like this idea, but if you did it this way, maybe, but you're back and forth, back and forth. Then we do the design drawings and the permitting drawings. Those take now an additional year, let's
So
call
the
it.
mitigation's gonna be funded by FEMA and DEEP as well?
No,
We might try to get a grant, but no, they are not proposing to fund it. But we would certainly apply for a grant.
I guess.
And then the
you also have to look
implementation
at-
part could take another
Is the
couple
board-
of years.
Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the RTM gonna have the stomach after spending $12 million to spend another $2 or $3 million for this mitigation?
It's probably gonna be 5 to 6 million.
Okay, 5 or 6.
Does anybody recall the old Penfield Pavilion? Do you recall the old Penfield Pavilion before they built this one?
You mean when it was Sun Haven Beach Club?
Yes. Okay, that was there. Now, what was it on, does anybody know what the elevation was underneath that pavilion? I was here, I
Nine.
remember
What?
water.
9.
Around 9.
Okay, so.
But that 9, and that comes from my recollection of I think it was the first argument against denying us the money.
Right, yeah.
And it was almost anecdotally, I think. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that if they were saying 9 back then in 2001, that was NAVD 29. So today, that's I think it's 1.008 feet
Translation between
lower. So 10 feet is 8 point, what did I say, 7 feet or something.
8.91 or something, which is one of the data that they.
Or 8.2.
So I guess to wrap this up, unless there's other questions, I mean, my guidance is that we're gonna have to spend money whether we tear the pavilion down or build it. It's a little bit more to rebuild it, and then we have a pavilion that is accessible to the town residents.
And it's still not compliant based on what.
No, so that might be something we wanna go, FEMA, I'm sure, would be happy to have us go to the 15.5 if we wanna spend another $1.5 million. Call it.
$1 million in that.
Well, they said between 1 and 2 million, that's the number I was given by the town.
I
So
mean,
that would be
You
a
listed
question
a
to ask
large
the town.
building.
I mean, I walk by that place and it's sad just to see what has happened with this and how we got to this point.
So last building committee didn't want to raise it to the 15.5, they said that they were compliant at where it was, they didn't want to spend the money, they didn't think it would look good in the air, and Chamberlain told us it would cost another $250,000 to build a couple extra steps and longer handicap ramps, and longer extensions on the utilities that come from underground. Now,
But the reality
I'm
is,
just repeating what they said.
Mhm.
Dick was at the meeting with me. I'm past chairman for their board. The building committee's got crazy.
I was told by a building committee member that because we also gave up the state money that would, if we'd built it to 15.5, we would've gotten an extra half
Yeah.
million.
Right.
We,
So that would have
Actually made
covered.
money.
we turned down the grant
We
because
turned
the building committee didn't wanna do it.
And what I was told was that they turned it down because they were getting pressure to have it open
Right.
for the next
Oh,
season,
big
and
pressure.
you would have had to go back and redo all the plans at a higher level, and you would have had to go back then and get the FEMA approval, which we actually never got, because we
Anyway.
never got it in the
Because they were
first
in
place.
they were in such a hurry to get it up and running.
It came up at the meeting, and they had consultants there too, and they were saying, well, we'll argue with FEMA later, but we're in a rush, we wanna get it open. Everything was rush, and how do we save money to get it open? Becky, my concern is, I thought your mediation study was going to take place after the
No.
construction,
It's gonna take place concurrent.
concurrent.
But again, that's.
But,
However,
but that's just the study
like
part, as I
this
said, there's
young-
three
I
steps
know,
to
right.
actually
I'd like
getting
to
it. That's
see-
the point, it's the study, yeah.
I'd like to see that the whole thing added to it so that they build the two at the same time. For the rest of you, I would have the honor of being in a meeting with Brenda, Becky, and Dick, on this whole thing, and heard some of the stuff firsthand from them. You gotta understand, if the Royal Road Pentway is 10 feet wide, they're talking about making a 400-foot wide Pentway at Penfield. There's a big difference. So you're gonna take all these little 8-foot elevation holes, and they're still not gonna be
Right.
total as big as the one at Penfield. I think it should, Race is a coastal engineering firm. I would think it's pretty easy for them to do a quick calculation. I've shared some of my calculations I got from a college friend, on how much more water is going to potentially come through from the elevation 8 from what it is now. It's pretty simple. You take the width and the height, and you come up with what the current flow would be going through there. You get the cubic footage. I had to fill in an Olympic swimming pool every 2 minutes. It's a lot of water. And it's going into your houses, your neighborhoods. As Mr. Romano said, it's everything in your garage, your shrubs. They're all junk, and you don't have any insurance on that.
No insurance on your landscaping.
No, flood insurance doesn't cover
Cover
outbuildings,
landscaping, yeah.
pool equipment,
No.
landscaping.
No.
You know, and I, like, you know, and so
Yeah,
you get
and if you were away, when the storm hits, you get a northeaster, you don't know what's coming, because it's not forecast
fences.
like a hurricane, you get the big flood, and you were away on vacation, you left the car there, well, it's sunk too.
So here's my request to close this meeting and this part of the meeting out, is if you have questions that haven't been answered, I would start first with, going to Brenda and asking, if she can answer them. And then if you, have questions that you want, Flood and Erosion is collecting questions to send to FEMA, so if you have those, please send those to FEBC@Fairfield, Connecticut.
Fairfieldct.org/FECB.
Oh, okay. Because we are trying one more time for our state rep.
What?
Email addresses.
I thought it was FEBC at
Oh, I'm sorry,
fairfieldconnecticut.org.
You're right, I'm going to our webpage.
Okay, sorry,
I'm sorry.
one more time.
It's
I don't know.
Flood Erosion Control Board, FECB@fairfieldconnecticut.org.
No, Fairfield CT.
Fairfield CT, not Connecticut,
FairfieldCT.org.
CT.
Fairfield C.
Don't ask me, I don't even know what
No,
month
this-
it is.
this-
How
this-
much-
Go to
These
FEMA.
are for questions that you would like us to ask FEMA through our state rep.
Why are you gonna screw our neighborhood over?
Yeah.
Well,
And the town
we won't.
clerk,
If we want to
they're usually very good at that.
understand or follow the mitigation
I know, right?
how do we go about it?
So we will be discussing it every month in our normal scheduled meeting. You're welcome to come into any of our meetings the same way you did now, either through, usually we do it on the telephone, we don't always do the Zoom, but you're certainly welcome to attend in person or on the phone. Our agendas are always posted ahead of time, so you can find out. It's usually the third Tuesday of the month, so we welcome you to attend that. Once FEMA approves this conceptual plan that's sitting with FEMA, Brenda will also be putting the funding proposal on the BOS, Board of Finance and RTM agenda, so you should keep your eye on those agendas. and see when it comes on, because we won't know when FEMA gets approved. The only way we'll know that FEMA's approved the conceptual plan is if it shows up on the agenda, because that means that they've given us conceptual approval.
So now this has to go through the approval process
Yes.
for this.
Starts with
After
the board-
FEMA,
John.
starts with the Board of Selectmen.
Then the
Then
Board
it
of
has to go
Finance,
to the Board of Finance.
Then it goes
And
to
then
the
it has
Board
the
of
RTM.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
and there's a chance for public comment and questions at the end of all those meetings.
And there,
Friends newsletter has stuff on that too.
Yeah, she
Yeah, Brett.
she
Good,
might
thank you.
actually update us.
and then,
The
I don't.
town has the money. It's
I-
not a bond issue.
I understand that the town has the money because, but, I mean, the money didn't come out of the air, it
Yeah,
came from the
no.
taxpayers. But, I just think that we need, I just want various alternatives to be considered in this process, in a way that looks to the best, to the interest of the people living near this facility.
And not for the sake of getting it done.
Okay? Screw when we get it done, if it's this summer, next summer, we don't care, we want.
Putting a lot of money on weddings, tell you that.
Yeah, well, they're gonna need a lot of weddings for to make up for $25 million.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you.
Well, let's just play that out, because my understanding is that FEMA is gonna, no matter what we do, FEMA wants us to go down to 8 feet. So we tear this place down, they want it at 8 feet. We rebuild, they want the grade beam at 8. We build a smaller structure, they want the grade beam at 8. So whatever we do, they're still gonna make us go at 8
One of the
and
things
have a
I'm
building.
confused by, okay, you have that dune at Rickards Beach and extending into Jennings. Do they want us to take that down to 8 feet?
No, there's a pre-existing.
Okay, so.
They got
we-
involved
but we
because there
keep-
was a building involved and because we
But
looked
if
at
we
it for
took
an
that,
insurance
if we
claim.
took out that building and we wanted to continue that dune,
They would say, because there was a building there, you have to take it down.
That dune, that portion of Rickards Beach, I believe, I don't know, maybe you lived here a long time. Was that a natural feature from day
No,
one, or was
no,
that
that was
built by the
man-made.
Army Corps?
That was
The
built back
town
in the
put that
sixties,
in.
right?
in eighty.
The
Was
town
it
put
at
the
the
dune
same
into
time
Rickards
that
Beach,
Jennings
and the
was
town
done?
put the dunes in,
We were
Jennings.
able to do stuff back then, that we
No,
can't
but
The
do
one
now.
at the end of Beach Road,
But
town created.
83, that dune was put in 83. Interestingly, my wife, who was not my wife at the time, she came out, she was from Chicago, she came out and visited. We were driving around, we walked over that walkway across from Birch Road to look at the beach, and that dune was already in place. Now it's in like 84, okay, they just built that. But,
But
so
not
you're saying, if
today,
that building's gone, we can't extend the dune
today,
as part of a.
No.
DEEP has the posture that if you want to build a frontal dune, that's a flood and erosion control structure.
If it's a reinforced
Not
dune.
allowed.
It's a reinforced dune.
No, even just plain
It's not,
sand.
it's not allowed.
Well, Army Corps did have dunes on one of their plans. Why would they have done that if it weren't gonna be able to be permitted?
See,
Did it in New
because,
Jersey.
They like vegetation.
Well, other states can do things we
Because-
can't.
Yeah, that's right.
but I mean,
Because they haven't attempted the permitting phase.
Yeah.
That's just
So,
kind of.
you know what, this is a good question to ask FEMA, which is, for the FEMA, for our reps. What if we took everything down and extended the dune and made it like there was never a building there? Could
Yeah.
we then extend the dune? I don't
right, and then.
think they would say yes, but I don't know, and it's a good question to ask.
Because
But it's also deep. Deep also has to approve that. That's not, FEMA's
Is that
not the
something that your
only
board would
entity.
be willing to ask them?
I think we should put it on the list to
Yeah,
ask.
because-
through our
and
FEMA.
then
Because I don't think the administration is willing to ask that.
I think that they're
I
wedded,
agree.
Well,
I think they're wedded to preserving this building. And I think that that's not necessary. I mean, look, you could do other things to service the public at the beach. You could bring in food trucks. You could change Jackie DeRill Hill Pavilion to have food service. There are other things you can do.
Well, I
rather
think
than-
the question is,
And you
if
can
you're
still
gonna-
have weddings
if
at
you're gonna
Jackie
be at 8
DeRill.
feet anyway, you might as well have a nice pavilion.
Right, but-
If you're gonna be allowed to do something other than go to 8 feet, then I totally agree with you.
Right,
But right now, everything we've heard, right
right.
now, everything I've heard is that no matter what you do, you tear the building down, you're at 8 feet. You build the building, you're at 8 feet.
But then what about why could you put a seawall? I
You
mean,
can't, no, you
The
cannot,
structure.
you cannot.
Well, when you were talking
it's
about what,
a flood and erosion.
It would be on
control
the
structure.
street side.
right, but you would still be putting a wall to keep the floodwaters out.
You're being rational.
No, a seawall at the road is not on the beach.
I understand,
So
but
it
what?
could be permitted, I
That
believe.
makes no sense, because if you're substituting, you could have a natural structure with plantings that would continue the dune that you've already nurtured and grown.
You're being rational.
That's your problem.
That's
You're using common
that's the
sense.
problem.
I
I think what we need to do is prepare the argument to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the RTM on that.
Well, look, I mean, I know it's a hard, it's
None of this can go
it's a
forward
tough
if one of
pill to
those bodies
swallow.
votes no.
Right, well, that's the thing, and then we're up against it with FEMA, because FEMA's gonna come after everybody because we're not taking any action. We need to take action. The question is, what do we do, and how do we protect, I mean, we got.
These questions might have been asked, and I don't know that. I have not been in any of the FEMA
You know,
negotiations, so
you know,
it may very well be that if we go and ask Brenda, she'll say, we tried that, and they said no. I don't know.
Why is it a mystery?
Who's allowed in these meetings?
Yeah.
I mean, it should
Yeah.
be mystery, FEMA and town.
I mean, I think there's just conversations back and forth between Tom Bremer and FEMA.
Maybe I asked Tom Brenner, and I haven't got an answer yet, maybe you have, will the building be insured by FEMA if we do all this work?
I
think so, it's compliant.
My understanding is that they are going to waive the 15.5 and they will still insure it, yeah. Otherwise,
If they approve the conceptual.
if they approve the conceptual plan.
And we follow that line.
And we follow. I mean, I wanna thank all of you for being very patient.
Thank you so
Being
much.
so.
Wait a minute, you have 3 minutes or up.
Ask your question.
thanking us. I can make
We like to thank you.
compliments, I can talk for 10 minutes.
There's no time limit on compliments. The other thing I just wanna say, if you've watched various meetings, people, the chairperson will say, nope, this is only for comment only, thank you, and they don't discuss things. And we take a different approach here.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you have to discuss this stuff because sometimes that teases out another
Well,
viewpoint.
the other thing is that.
We don't follow Robert's rules of order so strictly.
This other thing here is that people have invested a lot of their lives in the homes that they live.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you can't you're in a situation where you can make changes that can adversely, I mean, if, if we get something like a 38 hurricane, we're screwed.
Yeah.
We understand.
But we're screwed. You have to go over Jennings at that point.
Yeah, we're screwed, we understand that. We understand.
Was walking out of his building in 30
We
years.
yes.
Excuse me? I was gonna say something, but timing you.
Go ahead.
You're on your 14th 3 minutes.
All right. I thought I was making good.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, my main concern here, I was a teacher for 32 years. When you ask questions, you get answers, right? When kids ask me it's like, where was the disconnect here that none of us know who made these decisions? It's really scary, because moving forward, who's gonna make the decisions? It's like, this committee, who is on the committee? Who's responsible for not doing what FEMA said to do, and for losing money?
Maybe
That's a
someday
good
we'll
question.
know.
Some of us have our guesses, but we don't know for
Okay, but I
sure.
don't know what the answer is to that, but moving forward, I just don't want it to happen. You learn from your
You don't want it to
mistakes.
happen again.
Well, it won't happen again, I assure you. The three of us have been in the meetings, it will not happen again. How it happened before,
Well, no, all you can say is that the current administration seems very adamant that they will follow the
Yes.
law to the letter and not take any shortcuts.
yeah.
And not start building before we have approvals.
Is there another committee now? Is there
No,
another committee?
no, there'll be
They're
no
not
building
doing,
committee
they're
this
not
time.
planning on doing this.
There's no building committee, it's gonna be run by the administration and a, construction manager.
Project manager. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
We're just
construction
digging under
manager.
an existing structure, it's not a rebuild.
Now, like with my house, FEMA, they hired the builder. Is FEMA gonna hire the?
No,
construction
No,
So we
the
have-
construction manager will hire the subcontractor.
there are
Who's the
RFPs,
construction manager going to be, who's decided that?
so that has already been decided, it's on the RFP, there was RFQ put out, and there was a name.
Bismarck Construction.
What's their, history why did we pick them?
We put out a request for qualifications on the town purchasing website. I'm presuming, we did not see any bids, because they don't actually put bids on the purchasing website for RFQs, but presumably we evaluated several firms. I hope we did. That would be a question maybe to ask the administration.
They're all vetted.
Another person.
And they're all vetted to be able to do the job, and then we negotiated with them to find out who would be.
Whose brother-in-law is-
Yeah. No, I think this administration is very determined not to fall into traps that might have happened.
But I want to see this administration say, okay, what's going to be in the best interest of the field? Best interest of, in, for the decisions they make are going to impact a lot of homes.
And that's why you guys should ask the questions directly. And we are supporting the neighborhood behind by asking for the study, and ultimately we're gonna ask for the permitting money, and we're also gonna ask for the implementation money, because we believe that there should be something that keeps those neighborhoods from flooding.
You said that has there been
we're
money
down to
allocated for the
6.
study?
Yes, Brenda
$100,000.
verbally told me that she would budget $100,000. Now, does she have to get that through Board of Finance? Maybe.
Well, the thing is,
Yeah,
that-
yeah,
so
the
that's
whole-
not, that
Yeah.
has not.
I want it for you, but still,
That's $100,000, you just heard today, $400,000 to study that marsh in that.
700.
700,000.
That money has not been formally earmarked.
I believe that it will have to go through the Board of Finance and
Well, I
RTL,
would think,
like anything
I
else.
would think, yes. it
So,
would.
but what we know is that Brenda is going to support that. So, But again,
I hear your frustration, I sympathize with you very much. I think we're dealing with what we consider to be irrational decisions. It sounds crazy to me. And I think the problem, it goes up to the state representatives have to get involved if you're gonna get anything done. I think the town, they have your best interest, they're trying to do it, and they're not successful. I think you have to go
So who
at a
is
higher
it?
level if
Tony-
you're gonna get anything done.
Tony Wong, or?
Yeah.
Who else we can talk?
Tony Wong,
Yeah.
well, we're going to,
They've tried, I think they, honest effort, they've tried to do what we think is rational.
we're actually going to Jim Hines, who
Yeah.
is,
But he's
That's federal.
he's a federal.
but the FEMA is federal.
Yeah.
You gotta get them all.
But Jim Hines isn't willing to do anything.
No, he tried. Their office
tried.
tried back in the original rebuilding, and they have agreed to go back one more time. And that's why we're collecting questions.
Okay, so they're gonna try to go back.
They're gonna try and go back.
Jim Hines is
Jim Hines' office, I don't know if he personally,
I want him.
yeah, whatever, personally, well, that could be one of our questions. Will you be the one asking? Yeah. So, if there's no more questions,
Madam Chairwoman, I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second the
Becky,
motion.
I wanna comment for everybody, I think you did an excellent job,
Fantastic.
choreographing the history of this and how it went through. I know that took a lot of hours to put together.
it did, yes, but that's.
There's a lot of research that she had to do to put that chronological presentation together.
It's rather unseemly history.
Yes, very good.
So,
Have a
we're
vote?
adjourning the meeting.
I second, do you have a vote?
All in favor?
All in favor, aye, at 9:10.
Thank you all who attended by Zoom.
Thank you for spending your